Landsknechte. The Landsknechte, a term derived from the German words for servant of the land, were a distinctive class of mercenary soldiers originating in the Holy Roman Empire during the late 15th and 16th centuries. Founded by Emperor Maximilian I around 1486, they were modeled after the Swiss mercenaries, but developed their own unique identity and tactics. Landsknechte were renowned for their flamboyant and brightly colored attire, which set them apart from other military units. They commonly wore slashed doublets and trousers that allowed undergarments to puff through. Their primary weapon was the pike, used in tightly packed formations known as pike squares. Additionally, they were skilled in using the halberd, a pole weapon with an axe blade topped with a spike. For close combat, they wielded short swords called katzbalger, or large two-handed swords called zweihanders, often used by the elite Doppelsoldner, who were paid double for fighting on the front line. Their armor varied, but typically included a breastplate and a helmet, providing a balance of protection and mobility. They participated in many significant battles over the years. Notable engagements include the Battle of Pavia in 1525, where they helped secure a decisive victory for Charles V against the French, and the sack of Rome in 1527, demonstrating their effectiveness and ruthlessness in combat. One distinctive feature of the Landsknechte was their autonomy and unique culture within the military hierarchy. They were often led by their own elected captains, and maintained a sense of camaraderie and independence. Companion Cavalry. The Companion Cavalry, known as the Heteroi, were an elite cavalry unit of the Macedonian army under Philip II and his son, Alexander the Great. Originating in the 4th century BC, the companions were initially drawn from the Macedonian nobility and commoners favored by the king, who were bound by personal loyalty to him and were paid by the Macedonian crown. Their primary weapon was the Zeiston, a long spear about 3.5 to 4.2 meters in length, used for thrusting or with two hands as a lance. They also carried a kopis for slashing, or xiphus for cutting and thrusting. Their armor typically included a bronze helmet, initially of the Phrygian style, which was later replaced by the Boeotian type, a breastplate or linothorax, and greaves for leg protection. The Companion Cavalry played a decisive role in several key battles of King Philip's and Alexander the Great's conquests. Notable engagements include the Battle of Chaeronea, where they helped secure a crucial victory against the combined forces of Athens and Thebes, where it is said that Alexander, alongside his troops, was the first to break the lines of the famed Sacred Band of Thebes. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, they executed a daring flanking maneuver that led to the decisive defeat of the Persian Empire under King Darius III, which led to the eventual conquest of the Achaemenid Empire by Alexander. Tactically, the Companion Cavalry was known for its use of the wedge formation, a V-shaped arrangement that allowed for maximum impact during charges and leveraged their horses' herd instincts. This formation enabled them to break through enemy lines with concentrated force, causing disarray and opening gaps for infantry to exploit. Under Alexander, the companions often acted as a hammer, delivering the final decisive blow after the phalanx had pinned the enemy in place. Their coordination with the Macedonian phalanx exemplified the innovative combined arms tactics that characterized Alexander's military strategy. Housecarls. Housecarls were a bodyguard and standing military force loyal to Scandinavian and Anglo-Saxon kings and noblemen during the early Middle Ages. Originating in the early 11th century, these professional soldiers were utilized by kings such as Canute the Great, who ruled over England, Denmark, and Norway. Housecarls were well equipped compared to typical Norse soldiers. For defense, they typically wore chainmail hauberks that provided substantial protection without hindering mobility, paired with helmets such as the nasal helmet and round shields. Their most commonly used weapon was a spear, although weapons such as Dane axes, hand axes, and swords were also carried. They often formed the core of the shield wall, a defensive formation where soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, shields overlapping to create a wall of protection. This tactic was particularly effective in repelling enemy charges and was a staple of Anglo-Saxon military strategy. The Battle of Hastings in 1066 is perhaps the most famous engagement involving Housecarls. Fighting valiantly for King Harold II against William the Conqueror's Norman forces, the Housecarls formed the backbone of the Anglo-Saxon defense. Despite their skill, the battle ended in a decisive Norman victory, marking the end of Anglo-Saxon rule in England. The decline of the Housecarls began after the Norman conquest of England in 1066. The introduction of feudalism by the Normans led to changes in military organization, with knights and feudal levies replacing the professional Housecarls. Sacred Band of Thebes. According to historical accounts, the Sacred Band of Thebes was established by the Theban general Gorgidas around 378 BCE and was paid by the city to be permanently garrisoned within its walls. This unique unit consisted of 150 pairs of male lovers, with veteran warriors choosing younger, promising soldiers to be their partner. The idea was that the strong bond between each pair would inspire them to fight more fiercely and protect each other on the battlefield. Members of the Sacred Band were equipped similarly to other Greek hoplites. They wore bronze armor, including a breastplate, greaves, and a helmet, which provided substantial protection in combat. Their primary weapon was the dory, a long spear used for thrusting in the tightly packed phalanx formation. Additionally, they carried short swords, xiphos, for close combat when the spear was impractical. They also used large, round shields, aspis, which were crucial for their defensive tactics and formations, often with the club of Heracles emblazoned onto them. The Sacred Band of Thebes played pivotal roles in several significant battles. One of their most famous victories was at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE, where they fought under the command of the Theban general Epaminondas. At Leuctra, the Sacred Band was crucial in defeating the Spartans, marking the end of Spartan dominance in Greece and establishing Theban hegemony. Another notable engagement was the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE, where they faced the forces of Philip II of Macedon and his son Alexander the Great. Despite their valiant efforts, the Sacred Band was ultimately annihilated in this battle, marking the end of the unit. Tercios. The Spanish Tercios were an elite military unit that became the backbone of Spanish military power during the 16th and 17th centuries. Formed in the early 1500s with the patronage of the Spanish kings, Tercios were designed to combine the strengths of pikemen, swordsmen, and arquebusiers, and with the leadership of commanders such as Gonzalo Fernández de Córdoba, became a formidable force capable of humbling combined strengths of French knights and Swiss pikemen. Members of the Spanish Tercios were equipped with a mix of traditional and modern weaponry. Pikemen carried long pikes, up to 5.5 meters, and wore helmets and breastplates or light coats for protection. Swordsmen were equipped with steel swords and round shields called rodella, and were typically well armored. Arquebusiers, the firearm troops, wielded early matchlock muskets called arquebuses. This combination of weapons allowed the Tercios to engage effectively and counter enemy forces at various ranges. The Spanish Tercios were renowned for their disciplined and versatile tactics, arranged in large, square formations. Each tercio was typically composed of about 3,000 soldiers, divided into pikemen in the center, swordsmen on the outer lines, and arquebusiers on the flanks and corners. This formation allowed them to present a formidable defensive front against cavalry and infantry, while delivering devastating volleys of gunfire. The Spanish Tercios played crucial roles in numerous significant battles during their prominence. One of their early and notable victories was at the Battle of Pavia in 1525, where they captured the French king Francis I, securing Spanish dominance in Italy. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571 saw the Tercios as part of a Holy League fleet that decisively defeated the Ottoman navy, marking a turning point in Mediterranean naval warfare. The decline of the Spanish Tercios began in the mid-17th century as changes in military technology and tactics outpaced their traditional methods. By 1704, Spanish tercios were transformed into regiments, and the pikeman as an infantry type was dropped. Kheshig. The Kheshig were the elite imperial guard of the Mongol Empire, established by Genghis Khan in the early 13th century. Their primary role was to serve as the personal bodyguard of the Great Khan and his family. The word Kheshig means favored or blessed, reflecting their esteemed status within Mongol society. The Kheshig were divided into two groups, the Day Guard, Torgud, and the Night Guard, Kevtul, ensuring the Khan's protection around the clock. They were chosen for their loyalty, bravery, and combat skills, often drawn from the elites of various Mongol tribes. These warriors were equipped with the finest weapons and armor available to the Mongol military. Their primary weapon was the composite bow, a powerful and versatile weapon that allowed for accurate shooting on horseback. In addition to bows, they carried swords, lances, and maces for close combat. They wore lamellar armor made from small, overlapping plates of iron or hardened leather, providing excellent protection while maintaining mobility. Helmets and other protective gear like bracers and spalders were also part of their standard equipment. The Kheshig consisted of the best and most loyal soldiers the Mongol Empire was able to muster. In battle, due to their bodyguard function, they would stay close to whomever they were sworn to protect. Their training and discipline allowed them to execute complex maneuvers and rapid, coordinated strikes in the defense of their master. Their presence in battle often served as a morale booster for Mongol troops and a psychological weapon against their enemies, given their reputation for invincibility and loyalty to the Khan. They played vital roles in many of Genghis Khan's and his successors' campaigns. For example, during the invasion of Europe, the Kheshig, accompanying Batu Khan and Subutai, likely provided critical support in battles such as the Battle of Legnica in 1241, where the combined European forces, supported by the Templars, suffered a crushing defeat at the hand of the Mongols. The decline of the Kheshig began as the Mongol Empire fragmented in the late 13th and early 14th centuries. The disintegration of centralized power and the rise of rival khanates diminished the need for a unified imperial guard. However, their legacy endured, influencing subsequent guard units in various Mongol successor states and beyond. Gallowglass. The Gallowglass, meaning foreign warriors in Irish Gaelic, were elite mercenary warriors who originated in the Hebrides and western coast of Scotland, becoming prominent in Ireland from the mid-13th century to the early 17th century. The Gallowglass were typically the members of Norse Gaelic clans of Ireland and Scotland. Roaming the hills of medieval Ireland, they sought fortune and adventure by offering their martial skills to Irish clans, kings, and others who could afford their service. Gallowglass warriors wore a variety of equipment, typically a chainmail shirt worn over a linen undershirt, and a hybrid-style helmet. They were described as strong and broad men. Their primary weapon was the two-handed axe, which could deliver powerful, crushing blows capable of breaking through armor or even dismounting opponents mid-ride. They also carried large swords called claymores, and sometimes used spears and short swords for closer engagements. For additional defense, they often had small, round shields. This combination of heavy armor and weaponry made them formidable shock troops, capable of breaking enemy lines with their sheer force. The Gallowglass were renowned for their heavy infantry tactics. They typically fought in tight formations of around 80 men, accompanied by weapon-bearing skirmishers. Their role in battle was often as the decisive shock troops, used to break enemy lines and create openings for other combatants, or as a wall of bodies protecting archers and skirmishers located in the center of the formation. The Gallowglass participated in numerous significant battles throughout Irish history. They were prominent in the wars between the Irish clans and the English crown during the 16th century, including the Desmond Rebellions. Their involvement in the Battle of Knockdoe in 1504, where they fought for the Earl of Kildare, demonstrated their critical role in clan warfare and their impact on the outcome of regional conflicts. The decline of the Gallowglass began in the early 17th century, with the increasing centralization of power by the English crown and the consequent decline of Gaelic clan structures. The confiscation of lands and the establishment of English-controlled plantations reduced the demand for mercenary forces. Macedonian Silver Shields. The Macedonian Silver Shields, known as the Argyraspides, were an elite infantry unit within the army of Alexander the Great. Originating from the veteran soldiers of Philip II's army, these soldiers were part of the Hypaspitai, foot companions, a prestigious guard unit that protected the king. The Argyraspides were distinguished by their silver-plated shields, which was a symbol of their skill. These soldiers were primarily selected for their experience, skill, and loyalty, and they often played a critical role in the success of Macedonian military campaigns. The equipment of the Silver Shields was typical of Macedonian infantry, but of superior quality. They were armed with the sarissa, a long spear that could reach up to 18 feet in length, giving them a significant reach advantage over their enemies, or a dory spear typical to hoplites. In addition, they carried shorter xyphos swords for close combat. Their armor included bronze Phrygian helmets, linothorax armor or breastplates, greaves, and the iconic silver-plated shields. Tactically, the Silver Shields excelled in the use of the phalanx formation, a dense line of soldiers with overlapping shields and protruding sarissas. This formation was particularly effective in head-on engagements, allowing them to break through enemy lines with coordinated precision. The Silver Shields participated in numerous significant battles throughout Alexander's conquests. One of their most notable engagements was the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, where they significantly contributed to the decisive Macedonian victory over the Persian Empire. Another key engagement was the Battle of the Hydaspes in 326 BCE, where they fought and won against King Porus's formidable war elephants and troops in the Indian subcontinent. Their ability to adapt to different combat scenarios and terrains showcased their versatility and effectiveness. The end of the Silver Shields came after the Wars of the Diadochi, with the conflicts among Alexander's successors, following the fragmentation of Alexander's empire. Eventually, the aging veterans were relegated to less significant roles and faded from prominence. Samurai. Samurai, as we know them today, were a noble military class of feudal Japan that emerged during the Kamakura shogunate. The samurai were paid retainers of the daimyo, powerful Japanese feudal lords who ruled most of Japan under a shogun or an emperor. The samurai enjoyed special privileges compared to peasants, such as land ownership, the right to carry weapons, the right to kill lower-classmen, legal leniency, or access to education. They followed Bushido, meaning the way of the warrior, which was a moral code outlining values a samurai should abide by. The core virtues of Bushido were loyalty, honor, righteousness, bravery, respect, benevolence, honesty, and self-control. It is worth noting that what is considered Bushido has been greatly romanticized in recent history, and every samurai had their own understanding of the warrior code. The samurai were extensively trained in various types of combat, both on foot and on horseback. Although they were best known for their swordsmanship using the katana, the use of bows was considered a more vital skill. For close combat, the samurai were typically armed with a katana, a long, curved, and slender single-bladed longsword paired with a shorter blade known as a wakizashi, a practice known as daisho. They also often carried short stabbing knives known as tanto or kabutowari, a dull knife-shaped weapon designed for piercing armor. For medium-range combat, the samurai employed bladed poles known as naginata or spears known as yari. For long-distance engagements, an asymmetric longbow known as yumi was used. In later periods, the use of firearms was introduced into the samurai arsenal. For protection, the samurai used various types of body armor, the most well-known being oyoroi, which was generally of higher quality, more expensive to maintain, and designed for horseback archery used by the higher-ranking samurai, and the domaru, which was cheaper to make but also lighter and more flexible. Over the years, the samurai have faced many threats, both internal, fighting each other on behalf of their feudal lords, and external, protecting the islands from invaders. But with the modernization of the Japanese military around the 19th century, employing samurai became unsustainable, and with the Meiji Restoration, they were formally abolished, giving way to a more modern military system. English longbowmen. Even though the wooden bow has been used in warfare for hundreds of years, it was not until the appearance of the yew longbow that it became a dominant force on the European battlefields. It is debated whether the longbow originated in England or Wales, but by the 14th century it was used by both the English and the Welsh as a weapon of war and a hunting tool. The longbow was heavily utilized during the medieval period, and the men that used them quickly became the backbone of the English army, and a force to be reckoned with on the European battlefields. The practice of archery was greatly encouraged throughout England, making a lot of its population at least somewhat skilled in it. A typical English longbowman was not a career soldier, but a hunter who used a bow on a regular basis to provide for his family. Because the bow was considered an almost essential tool in a household, many people saw the purchase of a quality longbow as a good investment. A skilled archer was able to shoot between 3 and 5 or 6 arrows per minute. But rarely was this rate of fire consistent due to the force that was required to draw the weapon. Their effective and accurate range was around 80 meters, but the arrows could reach targets even 300 or more meters away. Although to be effective, a barrage of them needed to be fired. The longbowmen were usually lightly armed and placed behind some sort of defense, whether it was a natural point of advantage or a line of infantry, from behind which the archers would shower the enemy with a volley of arrows fired in unison. The arrows that were used could be separated into hunting arrows and war arrows. The hunting variant sported various types of heads, such as broad, forked, or barbed arrowheads, while the most common war arrowhead was the bodkin, designed for piercing armor. One of the most widely known effective uses of the longbowman was the 1415 Battle of Agincourt, where the English and Welsh archers, numbering between 5,000 and 7,000 strong and making up about 5/6 of the English army, ensured a victory against the French force of over 20,000. Although longbowmen have been a destructive force for decades, in the 16th century, when firearms and cannons became more widespread, they slowly fell into obscurity on the battlefield. The Polish Hussars, also known as the Winged Hussars or
Skrzydlata Husaria,
were elite heavy cavalrymen established in 1503. The early Hussars were a light cavalry unit that likely had its beginnings when exiled Serbian and Hungarian warriors came to Poland as mercenaries in the early 16th century, only to be integrated into the Polish army after some military reforms around 1580. The new and improved Winged Hussars were recruited from nobility. They were heavily armored horsemen, skilled in breaking enemy ranks in brutal and swift charges. A key distinguishing feature of the Polish Hussars were the large rear wings intended to demoralize the enemy during cavalry charges, and the use of often exotic animal pelts as armor decoration. Winged Hussars wielded heavy lances, typically measuring between 4.5 and 6 meters in length, along with various types of swords and sabers. These included the
Koncerz,
a narrow thrusting sword, the
Pałasz,
a backsword, and the
Szabla Husarska,
a Polish saber. They also carried maces, hatchets, warhammers, pistols, and other firearms, with the carabine becoming a mandatory weapon for Hussars in the latter half of the 17th century. Their armor was distinctively colored in Poland's national red and white scheme, often embellished with gold decorations and adorned with animal skins. Typical elements of their armor included the cuirass, spalders, arm braces, beavors, burgonet or lobster-tailed helmets, jackboots, and sometimes small cavalry shields. The Winged Hussars were renowned for their bravery and effectiveness on the battlefield, a reputation solidified during the Battle of Vienna in September 1683. In this historic engagement, 3,000 Polish Hussars, joined by 15,000 allied horsemen under the command of
Jan III Sobieski,
executed a legendary charge against the Ottoman besiegers, decisively breaking their ranks and securing a victory for the Christian coalition. This charge is now recognized as the largest single cavalry charge in world history. Hoplites. Greek hoplites were the heavily armored citizen soldiers that formed the backbone of ancient Greek warfare from the 7th to 4th centuries BCE. An ancient Greek city-state usually didn't have an actively serving military force. Rather, every male, upon reaching adulthood, would go through training that included drills, wrestling, tactics, and working in formation. In times of war, males, usually up to the age of 60, could also be drafted, although exceptions could be made. Each hoplite was responsible for providing his own equipment, leading to variations in gear among soldiers. A common hoplite typically carried a shield, spear, and possibly a helmet, with limited body armor. Wealthier hoplites equipped themselves with linen body armor called linothorax, while the wealthiest could afford bronze cuirasses, greaves, bracers, and a variety of helmets like Corinthian, Chalcidian, or Thracian types, along with shields, spears, and short swords for close combat. The key tactic of hoplite warfare was the phalanx formation, where soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, shields overlapping, presenting a wall of spears to the enemy. This formation emphasized cohesion, discipline, and teamwork, making hoplite armies formidable opponents on the battlefield. One of the most famous battles involving Greek hoplites was the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE, where they achieved a remarkable victory over a much larger Persian force. The Greek hoplites thinned their ranks to match the Persians, advanced towards the enemy, and then broke into a sprint upon entering the range of Persian archers, inflicting significant casualties and enveloping Persian troops. Legend has it that after routing the Persians, a Greek runner was dispatched to Athens to announce the victory. He ran the entire distance of 42 kilometers, and, upon delivering the news, collapsed and died of exhaustion, inspiring the modern marathon race. The Medjay were ancient Nubian warriors who served as a tribal and later as a specialized police force in ancient Egypt. Originating in the region of Nubia, modern-day Sudan, the Medjay gained prominence during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt and continued to play a role through the New Kingdom period. Initially, the Medjay were known as a tribal group from Nubia, skilled in hunting and warfare. As Egypt expanded southward into Nubia, the Medjay were recruited into the Egyptian army, becoming renowned for their tracking abilities, archery skills, and fierce combat tactics. The Medjay were typically equipped with simple weaponry, including bows and arrows, spears and shields. They were known for their expertise in desert warfare and hit-and-run tactics, often ambushing enemies or conducting reconnaissance missions deep into hostile territories. During the New Kingdom period, the Medjay transitioned into a specialized police force, responsible for maintaining order in the Egyptian frontier regions. They were tasked with controlling nomadic tribes, preventing smuggling and guarding important trade routes, particularly in the eastern desert and Sinai Peninsula. They were also tasked with protecting places of pharaonic interest like royal cemeteries or palaces. While the Medjay eventually faded from historical records after the decline of the New Kingdom, their legacy as skilled warriors and guardians of Egypt's frontier regions remains a testament to their significant contributions to ancient Egyptian society and military history. Janissaries. The Janissaries were an elite corps of infantry soldiers in the Ottoman Empire, being possibly the first infantry force in the world to be equipped with firearms. Originating in the late 14th century, the Janissaries were initially recruited from Christian communities in the Balkans through the devshirme system, where young boys were taken as slaves, taught Turkish by foster families, converted to Islam, and trained for military service in Constantinople. The Janissaries were equipped with distinctive uniforms and weaponry. They wore a distinctive tall hat called a bork, along with a long robe or tunic. Their primary weapons included bows and later muskets, swords, and occasionally shields. The Janissaries were renowned for their firearm proficiency, which was a significant innovation in Ottoman military tactics. Throughout their history, the Janissaries participated in numerous battles and campaigns, playing a crucial role in expanding and defending the Ottoman Empire. One of their most famous battles was the Siege of Constantinople in 1453, where they were instrumental in capturing the city and bringing an end to the Byzantine Empire. The Janissaries developed unique military tactics, blending traditional Ottoman warfare with modern innovations. They excelled in siege warfare, utilizing cannons and firearms to breach enemy defenses. The Janissaries also pioneered the use of volley fire and coordinated infantry maneuvers on the battlefield. The Janissaries were not only soldiers, but also served in administrative and political roles. They formed an influential social and political class, with their own hierarchy and system of organization. The era of the Janissaries came to an end in the early 19th century, when they rebelled against reforms initiated by Sultan Mahmud II. In 1826, the Janissaries were officially disbanded by the Sultan, marking the end of their centuries-long legacy as an elite military force and influential institution within the Ottoman Empire. Shinobi, more commonly known as ninja, were covert agents, espionage specialists, and mercenary spies originating from feudal Japan. It is believed Shinobi predecessors were disgruntled peasant groups that fought landowners and the ownership system using covert tactics in the 14th century. The actual Shinobi, meaning specially trained covert mercenary agents, had their beginning during the Sengoku period in the 15th century. The Shinobi were skilled in stealth, espionage, camouflage, disguise, martial arts, guerrilla warfare, interrogation, and evasion, which allowed them to operate undetected behind or within the enemy ranks. They utilized a variety of tools and weapons, with the shuriken, kunai, or short bows being the most commonly associated with the Shinobi among other weapons. They also were proficient in ninjutsu, a martial arts strategy focused on unconventional warfare, hand-to-hand combat, and espionage tactics. Contrary to their pop culture portrayal, Shinobi did not wear black clothing. Instead, they often operated within the enemy ranks for prolonged periods of time, impersonating, disguising themselves, or fully infiltrating the enemy in order to carry out their tasks. The decline of the Shinobi occurred with the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate in the early 17th century, which ushered in an era of stability and reduced the need for covert operatives. War elephants, mainly the North African forest elephants, and their riders utilized by the Carthaginian general Hannibal during the Punic War of 218 BCE between Carthage and Rome, were in a sense shock cavalry units focused on strategically breaking through enemy lines, creating openings for infantry and demoralizing the enemy. The war elephants were outfitted with specialized equipment for battle. They wore protective armor, covering the most vulnerable parts of their bodies like the trunk, legs, or neck made of leather, cloth, or metal plates. The offensive capabilities of the war elephants did not only come from the animal itself, but also from its riders known as mahuts. Besides the driver, between 2 and 4 soldiers were placed on the animal's back, often carrying long lances, javelins, or bows for combat. Some elephants were equipped with towers or platforms known as howdahs on their backs, increasing combat effectiveness of the soldiers riding the animal. Hannibal's war elephants participated in several key battles, most notably the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE. At Cannae, Hannibal's forces utilized war elephants to disrupt the Roman infantry formations, causing chaos and panic among their ranks. The elephants played a crucial role in the Carthaginian victory, although they also faced challenges navigating the rugged terrain and resisting Roman countermeasures. The era of war elephants in Mediterranean warfare gradually waned following the conclusion of the Second Punic War. Evolving military tactics and logistical difficulties ultimately led to a decline in the use of war elephants on the battlefield. Persian Immortals. By accounts of Herodotus, a Greek historian from the 5th century BC, the Persian Immortals were an elite force of 10,000 soldiers in the army of the First Persian Empire under the rule of Cyrus the Great. Chosen from the best fighting men in the Persian forces, the Immortals functioned as the Imperial Guard while also contributing to the Empire's standing army. A lot of what is known about the Immortals is dubious in nature due to insufficient historical evidence. But, according to Herodotus's accounts, the force was kept at a strength of 10,000 men, and every time one soldier died, another took his place. It is said that from this practice the name Immortals was born. In the partially fictional biography of Cyrus the Great, written by a Greek historian, Xenophon of Athens, the Immortals are described as wearing bronze breastplates with reinforced feld caps and having horses kitted out with bronze chamfrons and other armor pieces, protecting both the animal and its rider. According to Herodotus, the Immortals wore scale armor coats and were armed with bows and arrows, short spears, large daggers or swords, and leather-reinforced wicker shields, suggesting that the Immortals were well trained in various types of long or short-range combat. The Immortals could easily be distinguished from regular soldiers due to their equipment being of higher quality and, in the case of more senior members, being embellished in gold. It is also said that while a common Persian soldier was fed a simple diet, the Immortals enjoyed a diverse diet of fresh meats and produce while being accompanied by their concubines and servants that followed them wherever they moved. Due to their training and with them being professional soldiers, the Immortals were versatile combatants and could fill any role on the battlefield, supporting archers, standing with the spearmen, or engaging in melee alongside shield-bearers. The most famous battle the Immortals took part in is undoubtedly the Battle of Thermopylae during the Greco-Persian Wars, where King Leonidas I of Sparta took a stance with his 300 men against the Persians. Varangian Guard. The Varangian Guard, an elite force of Norsemen, served as personal guardians and ceremonial attendants to Byzantine emperors from the 10th to the 14th century. It was officially established around 988 by Emperor Basil II, who enlisted 6,000 Varangian warriors from Vladimir I of Kiev to help quell his political adversaries. Basil's decision to recruit Northern Europeans stemmed from his distrust of native Byzantine soldiers and guards, whose loyalties often shifted. Following the Norman conquest of England, the Varangian Guard saw an influx of Anglo-Saxons and skilled warriors from other parts of Northern Europe. Over time, the Varangian Guard earned a reputation for fierce loyalty, not to any individual ruler, but to the Byzantine throne itself. They were known as formidable and fearsome combatants, described as frightening both in appearance and equipment, attacking with reckless rage, and showing no concern for bloodshed or wounds. Their equipment varied based on personal wealth, but typically included chainmail or lamellar armor, reinforced leather shields, and weapons such as swords, great axes, and javelins. As they served, their fashion and gear became increasingly influenced by Byzantine styles and tactics. Historical records suggest that joining the Varangian Guard was so highly coveted in medieval Sweden that laws were enacted to curb emigration. The Varangian Guard participated in nearly every conflict involving the Byzantine Empire, often deployed in critical battles where a decisive victory was imperative. Over the centuries, the Varangians assimilated with the native Greeks and eventually faded out of existence by the 14th century. Mamluks. The term Mamluk, meaning one who is owned, refers to non-Arab, ethnically diverse slave soldiers who served under ruling Arab and Ottoman dynasties in the Muslim world. The history of Mamluk soldiers dates back to the 9th century in Baghdad during the Abbasid rule of Egypt, where the practice of training slaves to become skilled soldiers became widespread. Originally, Mamluks were predominantly captured men of Turkic, Caucasian, and Eastern European origins. However, in later centuries, their ranks expanded to include individuals from various backgrounds, such as Russians, South Slavs, Albanians, and Hungarians. Mamluks underwent rigorous military training from a young age, specializing in military tactics, horsemanship, and swordsmanship. They excelled in mounted warfare and gained a reputation as fearsome heavy cavalry. In battle, they were protected by metal lamellar armor or chainmail, shirts, and coifs, accompanied by smaller shields designed for use on horseback. Their arsenal included curved swords like the Kheshig, maces for armored opponents, lances for cavalry charges, and bows for long-range engagements. Over time, Mamluks evolved into a powerful military class, owned by ruling dynasties across various Muslim societies, particularly in Egypt, Syria, the Ottoman Empire, and the Levant. In some cases, they rose to positions of political and military authority, eventually becoming sultans or emirs. Notably, Mamluk factions seized control of the Sultanate of Egypt and Syria, establishing the Mamluk Sultanate, which lasted from 1250 to 1517. The Mamluks also played active roles in defending the Muslim world against crusading Europeans. They notably contributed to expelling Christian crusaders from the Levant in 1302, highlighting their pivotal role in shaping the region's military and political landscape during the medieval period. Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard was a renowned military unit of the Roman Empire, known for its role as the personal bodyguards of Roman emperors and its significant influence in imperial politics, formally established by Emperor Augustus around 27 BC. The Praetorian Guard originally consisted of elite soldiers, tasked with ensuring the safety and security of the emperor and his household. The Praetorian Guard was equipped with standard Roman military gear, including helmets, body armor such as lorica segmentata or chainmail, and large rectangular shields known as scuta. They were armed with gladius swords for close combat, javelins for ranged attacks, and sometimes carried daggers as secondary weapons. Over time, the Praetorian Guard's role expanded beyond protection, to include political influence and manipulation. They often played a pivotal role in imperial succession, supporting or deposing emperors based on their own interests. The Guard's barracks were located within Rome, and at its peak, it comprised around 9,000 soldiers, making it a formidable and influential military force in the empire. The Praetorian Guard's power and influence eventually became a threat to imperial stability. After siding with Emperor Constantine's rival Maxentius in a civil war in 312 AD, Constantine disbanded the Praetorian Guard, marking the end of their centuries-long existence. Eagle Warriors. Aztec Eagle Warriors were elite infantry soldiers in the Aztec military renowned for their bravery, skill, and distinctive eagle-themed attire. Originating from the Aztec civilization in ancient Mesoamerica, Eagle Warriors were among the highest-ranking warriors in Aztec society alongside the Jaguar Warriors. Eagle Warriors were selected mostly from the upper caste of Aztec society for bravery, the ability to capture many slaves and confirmed kills. They wore elaborate feathered costumes adorned with eagle feathers. Their attire included a headdress with a beak and eyes of an eagle, along with cotton or animal skin body armor. In battle, Aztec Eagle Warriors wielded a range of weapons, including wooden clubs studded with obsidian blades, spears, and long-range weapons like bows and arrows. Eagle Warriors participated in several significant battles during the Aztec Empire's expansion and defense. Eagle Warriors also played a crucial role in the Spanish-Aztec War during the conquest of Mexico, defending their capital city against Hernán Cortés and his conquistadors. Despite their formidable reputation and skill in battle, the Aztec Empire faced eventual defeat by Spanish conquistadors led by Cortés in 1521. Jaguar Warriors. Both Aztec Eagle Warriors and Jaguar Warriors held esteemed positions as elite warriors within Aztec society, embodying distinct aspects of valor and skill. While Eagle Warriors symbolized the swiftness and agility of the eagle, often outmaneuvering and outsmarting opponents with strategic finesse, Jaguar Warriors epitomized the brutal strength and ferocity of the jaguar. They engaged in close combat with unmatched aggression, reflecting the raw power associated with their animal counterpart. Berserkers. Viking Berserkers were semi-legendary Norse warriors known for their ferocity and battlefield frenzy. Originating from ancient Scandinavia, Berserkers were a distinct class of Viking fighters who fought with unparalleled aggression and fearlessness, often entering a trance-like state during battle. Berserkers were characterized by their distinctive attire and equipment. They typically wore animal skins, such as bear or wolf pelts, to invoke the spirit of the animal and intimidate enemies. Berserkers were often depicted as wearing little armor, relying more on their speed and agility in combat, a notion which has been largely abandoned. In terms of weaponry, Viking Berserkers wielded a variety of weapons including swords, axes, and spears. They were renowned for their skill in close-quarters combat, often preferring brutal and direct methods of attack. Berserkers participated in several notable battles throughout Viking history. One such battle was the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, where Viking forces led by Harold Hardrada fought against the English army. According to the sagas, a single Viking berserker holding the bridge had cut down over 40 Englishmen before being killed. The era of the Viking berserkers eventually came to an end with the Christianization of Scandinavia and the gradual centralization of power in medieval Europe. Order of Assassins. The Order of Assassins, also known as the Nizari Ismailis, was a secretive and feared heretical sect of Islamic assassins that emerged during the 11th century and lasted up until the second half of the 13th. The order was founded by Hassan-i-Sabah, also known as the Old Man of the Mountain, in the late 11th century in Persia, and operated primarily in the mountainous region of Alamut. The assassins often employed stealth, subterfuge, and psychological warfare to achieve their goals. One of their distinctive techniques was the use of assassins disguised as ordinary people to infiltrate enemy ranks and carry out targeted killings. Equipment and weaponry used by the assassins included various blades, poisons, and tools of concealment. They were trained in martial arts, short-blade combat techniques, archery, and the art of stealth. The assassins participated in several notable battles and conflicts during the Crusades, where they targeted key figures and leaders from both the Christian and Muslim forces that threatened their vision of the world. One of their most infamous acts was the assassination of Conrad of Montferrat, a prominent Crusader leader, in 1192, but several other historical assassinations are also attributed to them. The era of the assassins came to an end with the Mongol invasion of Alamut in the mid-13th century, which led to the destruction of their strongholds and the dispersion of their members.